Hola, from the west side. It is me, DC the Purple Diva. Welcome to Not So Random Chat. Happy Friday, y'all. And happy Memorial Day weekend. The unofficial start to summer. Because we all know that technically in the northern hemisphere, summer doesn't start until June 21st. So we have our, what do they call it? Summer solstice. You know, the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere where we have sunlight for the longest amount of time versus winter solstice where we have the shortest day of the year. So I hope everyone is ready for the weekend. I hope everybody's ready to relax. I know I'm ready to have a few days off. But I'm really excited about the work that I've been doing on I can't even call it a play anymore. Now it's a movie. This movie that I'm working on. And I don't have a big role in it, but I have a couple of good scenes. And I just really want to do my best job as an actor. So I'm hoping that when we actually get in there to do the filming versus all the rehearsals we're doing now via Zoom, that we're able to bring the same energy that we've been bringing in our Zoom rehearsals. But I have to admit that Zoom rehearsals is a new, kind of thing. It's interesting, to do the Zoom meetings, but it's different when you're trying to do something like rehearsing scenes. And it's definitely hard if you're trying to do something that involves music because you got to deal with feedback a lot of times in those types of situations when we've tried to do it. So, but I'm glad that we have it. I'm not complaining because if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be able to get together to do what we're doing. And we wouldn't be able to take this, negative time that we're all dealing with or have been dealing with and, do something positive during this time. But, the world is starting to open back up. And the state that I'm in is starting to open back up. And interestingly enough, one of the things that I've been talking about, questions I've been asking is when, hey Darren, yeah, we're waiting on Nkrumah Ture, and get some folk in here because I know people are kind of scattered all over YouTube right now. But, I had to be on time. I couldn't be lingering, not getting on here on time tonight. But with all the stuff that's going on, I think that it's a good opportunity for people to think outside of the box. Because like we thought outside of the box on how we could still do this production. And it turned into it being, instead of being a stage play, which it will still eventually be, we're going to do a movie in the meantime until we can, put it out there. And then the movie will be able to reach a wider audience than just those in the Los Angeles area. And hopefully it will draw people in to come see the actual stage play when we're able to actually put it on. So I'm hoping. And we're actually going to do another one also, which I I have a funny role in, a funny but serious role. It's funny in the way that I play it, but some of the things that the character is dealing with are some serious situations. And that one's called Big Girls Don't Cry. And in that one, hey Tatted Hearts, happy Friday, happy Memorial Day weekend. In this one called Big Girls Don't Cry, I play a character who has lost over 200 pounds through having surgery. And in order to keep the weight off, she starves herself a lot of times, or she does, purges, a nice way to say it. She's not anorexic, but she'll eat and then she'll eliminate the food. So it's part of, what the character is based on. So, and she's kind of stuck on now being a skinny girl when she used to be a bigger girl, and kind of resents, some of the other women, not caring about their weight. So it's going to be interesting playing that role too, because the last time I played that particular role, um, the writer of the play was actually still alive. And this is actually a play that is going to be going into a movie. And he died almost 2 years ago. And it was as a result of, type 2 diabetes. And, the complications that, came along with it. And one of the things that he preached a lot before he died the second time, because he had died a first time, was gone for 45 minutes and came back, no brain damage. But when he was gone, he had obviously a conversation with the one above, and came back and changed a whole lot of things and lived over a year more, and died 3 days before he was supposed to get married. No Friday, whatever. I know. See, I'm working, Tatted Heart, so even though, I'm inside and the days do kind of mesh together and everything, I still gotta, I'm working and, having to communicate with my office on a daily basis, just like I did before this, helps me to keep track of the days. But I lose track of the days sometimes too. But I don't forget when I got it when it's Saturday or it's the weekend. And I definitely am not forgetting a 3-day weekend. Hey, Sentinel, how are you? Thank you for coming. Yeah, I'm not going to forget that this is a 3-day weekend, man. And it's going to be a different type of, normally I'm not one of those people who goes around to a whole bunch of big gatherings and everything. I kind of have, since my dad has moved to the East Coast and my mom is no longer alive, we don't do like the big stuff we did. My dad would have the big, huge thing for all the different holidays. And then I did that when I had my house. But, now it's not, we don't do as much, but we are going to hang out with a small circle of people and do some social distancing on tomorrow with, some of the people that are in the cast for the movie. And, kind of, it'll be the first time that we've seen each other in like 2 months, but we'll still be waving to each other at least 6 feet apart. You know, that we're going to actually meet at the place that we're going to be doing the filming, because we're going to be doing the filming at a house, and we'll at least be able to get a feel of how we're going to do the filming, you know, and, you know, deal with how we're going to be able to do it and do the social distancing that we need to do. So that will be nice. And there's going to be food there, you know, we may do a little karaoke, you know, so that will be nice. It'll be nice to see people. Hey, Terry, you here? Great. I've just been keeping everybody entertained till you got here. So as I, you know, I'm gonna put the link in the thing in just 1 second. Let me grab my I should have been prepared. Let me grab my mouse. But I'm gonna continue talking because I know I have a big mouth. Tonight, as I promised, you know, this week, we were going to get back into our series in the Not So Random chat and dealing with the history of the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And, you know, Terry has been doing this at my request because it was some information that I wanted to know more about, and I knew that he was much more knowledgeable about it than I am, and so I wanted to have him to be, you know, to use my platform and collab with me on this, and I really do appreciate him doing this because you guys know I'm all about the knowledge, and this always ties back into other things that I'm going to be having on the platform. So just give me 1 second, Terry. I'm going to drop the link so that you can. I hope I'm putting the right link. Let me make sure I'm putting the right links. The last time I put something crazy, like a YouTube. Okay, it's StreamYard. But yeah, we're gonna start. We're gonna get back into that. And guys, what I'm gonna do after Terry and I finish this series is I'm actually gonna put a separate create a separate live stream list that's just gonna have the live streams in it where he's done the talking on this, so that people will easily be able to find each one of those and be able to go through all of them in order. But you know, right now they're just kind of buried in all of my live streams. However, I know which ones they are, and I'm going to create the list. I just wanted to finish the entire series before I created a playlist for it. But I will be putting one together for that. Oh, no problem, Terry. No problem. I appreciate you just taking the time to get up here and talk to us. And I know it's a holiday weekend, you guys, but you know, we're still just opening everything back up, and people are still mainly staying home. You know, in my neighborhood, they're shooting off fireworks. 1 second, let me let Terry up on the panel. Hey, Terry. Happy Friday.
Hey.
All right, I'm going to turn down the music. Happy Friday.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. Wasn't really sure. I want to thank you for allowing me back up to collab with you on some more information concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Was there any questions that you wanted to ask me or anything before I get into it?
I didn't have any questions at this time, but I think once you finish, I will have some questions because we're now coming closer to the present, and maybe tie that into what some of the things that are going on today as you go through it.
Okay, because what I've done this time around, I went ahead and distilled some of the information down so it won't take long.
Okay.
Again, there was just a lot of information that I could have put in, but I wanted to sort of shorten it a bit so it won't take up too much time. Because you can get into some of the timelines, and a lot of it has a lot of details that could otherwise be said a little more simply. So I'm going to do that.
All right. Well, I'm going to put myself on mute, and everybody.
Okay.
We are going to be listening to Nkrumah Ture giving us the next installment on the history of the PLO.
All right. Well, thank you. Hope everybody's been doing well tonight. We'll be covering the year 2000 to 2010. This will be the second intifada. And before I get into that, I just want to give my references in terms of the analysis that I put together are from these sources. Let me just name them for you. First, it's called The History of the Arab-Israeli Conflict by Professor Mark Tesler. Second one is called The Question of Palestine by a gentleman named Edward Said. Another one, The 13th Tribe by Arthur Koestler. And yet another one is called Zionism in the Age of Dictators by Lenny Brenner. And of course, I've also consulted the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I would strongly advise those who are serious about getting more of a just a 30-second clip from the U.S. press. Definitely pick up those books either at Amazon or from a library and study them. So with that, we'll just pick it up briefly on the diplomatic front. That goes into July 2000. At this point, the Zionist occupation has ran some 52 years of illegal occupation, that is. And what we find is the Israeli premier, his name is Minister Ehud Barak, met with the then Palestinian Authority chairman, Yasser Arafat, with President then Bill Clinton at Camp David. And what they did was to go through the motions to negotiate a final settlement based on the 1993 Oslo Peace Accords. And if you remember, that was one of the major pieces of agreements that they put together that really started to disintegrate in this particular decade. But they thought that they would actually do some further negotiations to build on that. Despite the progress with other issues, the two sides really couldn't reach an agreement on Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was particularly, and that is in Israel, was particularly a harsh spot for both sides because, one, it remained a contentious issue because it was a holy city to Judaism, also Islam, and Christianity. The Zionists themselves and Palestinians both refused to relinquish control of it. They both claimed control. As we got into later on in the year, um, September 2000, the Associated Press reported that the Palestinians announced any deal that did not include all of the West Bank and sovereignty over East Jerusalem, including a mosque. Uh, I believe it was called Haram Es Sharif. Forget my pronunciation. It was located in East Jerusalem. If all those things weren't included in the negotiations, they wouldn't accept anything. So this signaled another breakdown in negotiations at that particular point. And as we go into October of that year, the Palestinian Authority, they tried to be pragmatic, in my opinion, in approaching the negotiations with Zionist Israel. Now, on the other hand, another force that was growing in popularity in the West Bank and Gaza strips, called the Hamas, which was a rival to the PLO, was a much more militant faction of Palestinian Arab resistance. What they articulated which was a opposite direction, and that was specifically an Islamic State in all of Palestine. And Hamas, in their growing popularity, rejected the Oslo Accords and actually initiated a series of guerrilla attacks against Zionist targets. Now, these particular targets were from suicide bomb attacks. But meanwhile, the Zionists themselves continued to build settlements in the territories of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And also, I might add, the Golan Heights, which is actually located in Syria. This stirred up a hornet's nest and excited the Palestinians to import arms to build up a resistance force for their particular agenda of defense. As a result, talks broke down again, and due to, in my opinion, mutual frustration and recrimination, acrimony, and controversy between the two sides, what happened next would be something key that began the Second Intifada in earnest. Let me just, if I may, give a quick definition of the word intifada for those who may not have been with us last time when we talked about it. Just briefly, intifada is an Arabic word meaning uprising. That's where it's commonly known. And it's uprising against foreign occupation, specifically in the Gaza and West Bank, Gaza Strip and West Bank.
And that's what I was going to say. Yeah, because this is when they were occupying part of Syria illegally as well.
Absolutely. As we move forward during this time frame, and we're talking about October of 2000, the Zionist Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. This is the key here, the thing that actually initiated the Intifada, or what happened with Ariel Sharon visiting the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Something also that the Palestinians claimed themselves sovereignty over. Now, Ariel Sharon did the same thing. He went there as an act of sovereignty over the mosque, Al-Asqiya Mosque, Islam's holiest site. Now, Sharon's presence, ignited a violent revolt from the Palestinians. Once again, the violence began. It was on, and um, attacks again in earnest.
I have a
Absolutely.
quick
Go ahead,
question
sis.
about the
You can
mosque.
jump in anytime.
Yeah, is that
Yes.
mosque supposedly built on the same site as the temple was?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. What was that again? Say it again.
Is the mosque supposedly built on the same site as the temple, you know, where they have the Wailing Wall and all of that in Jerusalem? Is this in
I'm
Jerusalem
not
we're
sure.
talking about?
I'll check that. I believe I believe that it's in the same area, but I can't really be too sure. I'll have to
Because
find
I,
that
my
information since I
understanding is
did not.
that's part of the major conflict is that the Zionists or Khazarian Jews are claiming, you know, that's the same site as um, being where, you know, the Temple of David, you know, the temple was that got torn
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
you know, centuries ago.
Now
Okay.
you're talking about you're if you're referring to East Jerusalem, then
Yeah.
that's a yes.
Yes,
I
that's what I'm
wasn't.
talking about. So is this in East Jerusalem
Yes,
or
absolutely.
okay, that's what I okay, I just was
Right.
clarifying that
And
yeah, yeah, this is a big deal. Okay, go ahead. I'm gonna go back on mute. I just wanted to clarify that that's what this was.
absolutely, no problem. I'm just gonna adjust my volume a little bit, just turn it up a little bit more. Okay. All right, I got it maxed out. So hope everybody can hear that well.
Oh, I do
Now the
see.
tax on both.
I see the uppity said something in the chat. She's saying that it was the Muslims' land first, and the building is thousands of years old. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We're talking about going back exactly the Temple of Solomon. That's what I'm talking about. That this is the site of the Temple of Solomon. That's all. That's what I wanted to
Right.
clarify. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So the Palestinians carried out increased suicide bomb attacks on Zionist targets, and so in retaliation, the Zionist forces executed bombing raids on Palestinians. So you see the back and forth, but you see the evil here and the tension and the antagonism coming from the Zionist forces, the occupied Zionist forces. Uh, the so uh, actually, what this did was exacerbated tensions in the regions, and what I believe is that uh, the September 11, 2001 attack on the World Trade Center exposed a tie between several military organizations and states hostile to Israel, but with good reason. For instance, I think Hamas and Hezbollah were linked to Al Qaeda, and pro Osama bin Laden demonstrations were held in Palestinian controlled areas. But I also believe that this was a golden opportunity for the US and European Union to kind of give Zionism more freedom to act against the Palestinians. But however, rioting continued. Uh, the Zionist enforcers responded with lethal force. And then, of course, once again, during this time frame, Palestinians were angered as unrest swiftly spread throughout the occupied territories. At this point, the Second Intifada had begun. So it takes us into understanding that this second uprising was more violent than the first. Now, during that 5 years, roughly 4,300 people were killed, and that found that the racial the death ratio of Palestinian Israelis was about 3-1. What's I think striking is in March 2002, the Zionist enforcers launched what they call Operation Defense Shield, and it was anything but defensive. This was just a move to, in my opinion, to reoccupy the West Bank and parts of the Gaza Strip. And they did so. Now, 1 year later, the Zionists started building a separations barrier in the West Bank to match a similar one that they erected in Gaza in 1996. I think we covered that in an earlier discussion. They also launched about 200 state-directed assassination attacks against Palestinians and political leaders, military operatives, and civil protesters as well. And of course, this violence continued into 2005. Now, conditions, I feel the conditions causing it had worsened. The Zionist settlement activity in the West Bank continued. Tight controls were placed on the movement of Palestinian goods and people. And when you have that occur, this stifles economic growth. And as well, what also I found out that just held negotiations at a standstill. The Palestinian Authority lost support. And this was amid charges of widespread corruption. Many Palestinians who had for decades followed the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, or the PLO, had lost confidence in it during this particular time. And so naturally turned to Hamas, who won the 2006 Palestinian legislative elections and took power by force in Gaza around 2007. So it takes us to 2008 at this point, after exchanges of rocket fire between the Zionists and Palestinians in Gaza. The Zionist government, Hamas, signed a Egyptian broker ceasefire. It was a fragile one, though, and it only held truthfully throughout the rest of 2008. And the Zionist forces maintained this blockade during the whole time of Gaza. And the economic situation in Gaza intensified for the Palestinians. Rocket fire increased through 2009. Zionist forces then began airstrikes and ground invasions. The Israeli citizens, though, inside the Zionist state apparatus, supported the attacks, but they actually drew criticism from the international community because the attack resulted in about 1,400 Palestinians dead. So that caused a strain on Zionism's relationship with the UN. And particularly a heinous act occurred during this point. The Zionist mortar fire hit a Palestinian school with youth in it at the time of the bombing. It was about, according to the UN, 40 children were killed, and those actions, to me, are equal to war crimes. But as expected, the Zionists disputed the facts. And of course, there was more condemnation of Zionist Israel. 2010, after they launched another military operation. Now, this is what happened. When they launched this military operation on a fleet of ships, that were actually on a humanitarian mission to Gaza for the Palestinians. Now, the ships themselves were carrying aid and construction materials. Okay. The Zionist commandos somehow boarded the ship at random and murdered 9 people. But the ships belonged to Turkey. So needless to say, that strained relations between Israel and Turkey. They opened fire, and meanwhile, the U.S. increased the pressure on Israel to accept a 2-state solution. But I felt personally there was a lot of empty platitudes were offered. At this point, Obama saying that for a lasting peace, the Arabs must renounce violence and recognize Israel's right to exist. But you can see here where the exacerbation is coming from.
And see, that's part of the
Zionist Israel.
Yeah, and for those of you in the chat that haven't been here for some of the other things that I've done, because I know when we get on this kind of stuff, we get like a really small group, and that's okay. I don't mind. Y'all can come back for the replay, but the reason that I go through making sure that this history is out there and people understand this stuff is because we've been given a slanted view of what's going on in the Middle East. We've been given only the view from the perspective of the Zionists and the Khazarian Jews. And been in one of my previous live streams, I've gone over the history of the Khazarian Jews and the fact that they are not the actual Hebrew Israelites. They have, knowingly or unknowingly stolen another people's history and made it their own, and made the land that was promised to this other people by the Most High their own land too. And the whole world is in on the deception. And that's the reason why we go through these exercises.
Yeah. What Zionism has done, we know that if we look at their history, they've attached themselves to Western imperialism. I know just America alone gives them about $8 billion a year in aid and domestic military aid, maybe a little more than that though, and largely responsible for propping the illegal state up. If, for instance,
it's us and the UK that are basically propping them up, and now everyone else in that entire area appears to be afraid of them, except for the PLO.
Yeah, if they were hypothetically to lose support, and they won't, but if they did, Israel would sink in a week because it would be even Steven at that time. They are supported by superpower, and the Palestinians. They are part of the Arab League, but they don't have the benefactor that Israel has had for over 72 years now and counting. And so we see.
I was going to say it would appear because of the person who occupies the White House at this point, that those relations should be just wonderful because he's basically kissing their butt.
Israel tell the United States to jump. The United States will say how high. Literally, in my opinion.
Yep.
They're still an illegal state. I feel that, in my political opinion, the unification of Africa under an all-African Union government would not only even the score, but would sever the tentacles of the interlocking corporations combines, cartels that are, siphoning some 700 plus billion plus in resources from Africa. They wouldn't have the wherewithal. It would be even Steven with the Palestinians, who are the rightful owners of that land, who are the Semites and the Khazars, in my opinion. So I think that it would be very strategic, necessary, if and when Africa could come to the point where they can unify into a wider union of African states under a political machinery that could direct political and economic policies for the entire continent. Until that happens, I think you're still going to see imperialism's sort of creation, strategic creation in the middle of the Arab world.
And that's the sad thing is that a lot of those of us who are in the diaspora, we don't really we don't realize that those who threw us off the continent then went to suffer in my opinion, a greater travesty, because just as although we may have lost our customs, our tongues and all of that stuff, they actually lost the physical land. They didn't lose. They may not, they still live there, but they don't really own it. Somehow Europeans own everything. How the hell did that happen?
Right. Well, we can talk about that one day. There's definitely
that's definitely
history behind that.
That would be a different one. Just talking about colonization of Africa.
Absolutely, yeah. It coincides also with the scramble for Africa. We can go over that. We can go over what happened after World War I. That's very, very significant with the rise of Russia as well, and a competing ideology to Western capitalism as well, and what they felt they had to do to actually sort of protect their stolen holdings, if you will, that they've taken from other lands, and how they had to change their strategies, the international strategy, the colonization, and then of course with the anti-colonial movement in Africa, and then the West wanting to continue the same exploitative relationship, but they know they couldn't do it physically anymore with Europeans, Caucasians on the soil of Africa, sort of ruling over them in their own land. So it went from that to neo-colonialism, and there's a reason for that. So we definitely we can break that down.
Because I think it's important for those of us on this side of the Atlantic to understand really what's going on the continent. Probably have a better understanding of it, and maybe that will help some of us to understand why they feel the way that they feel about us, and we feel the way that we feel about them.
Yeah.
Because
mainly Britain. Well, we'll be. We can talk about mainly at that time frame. We're talking from 1885 really up to the day, but I think a lot of the strategic changes that they instituted was after World War I and after World War II. Very, very significant after World War II, because America had problems, as you may know, in the conditions of the workers, wanting better, really a part of the wealth. They wanted better conditions for themselves. So you had pressure there, internal pressure, and then external pressure, and the colonies clamoring for semblance of independence. And most of them got nominal independence, and only several, like maybe 8 or 9 of them, actually had de facto independence. We can go all into that, and and how that happened. They had to. That's they went from, and externally they had to go from settler colonialism, and some of the sub
how the dealing with how nations like the Zulus were destroyed, and how that aided in them being able to do the neo-colonialism over there in the 1800s.
Right, and of course, we're talking about well, with the exception of the Union of South Africa and then Rhodesia, we're talking about 2 settler colonialist governments. One since at that point, 1912, and then I believe I want to say, wow, I'm sorry, I can't think of when that started with Ian Smith. It was the Herrenbock philosophy of apartheid, which they had the tacit approval of Great Britain, and like 400,000 whites ruling over roughly 4 million Africans in their own land. But everybody else, of course, got some sort of semi-independence, so to speak, except the de facto nations were Ghana, Guinea. Of course, Ethiopia wasn't touched at all. Algeria, Tanganyika.
And we need to talk about why Ethiopia got through that pretty much unscathed.
Yeah, we definitely talk about that. I mean, I don't know if you, right. So I mean, we can say, we can save all that till next time. But
that's what. But that I'm just kind of letting them know some of the things. The reason we wanted to give all of this background around, just around Israel and around the PLO, and really so we could understand the real role that the country that we all live in has in all of the things that are going on over there. And to a large extent, the U.S. is pretty much the reason why they've been able to hold on to that land.
Yeah. That too is a backstory to that too. After World War II, because at that point, Palestine, of course, was under British mandate, and after World War II, of course, United States kind of stepped in as a preeminent power after the war, sort of took over the lead, imperialist, in terms of the nations that were all had imperialisms going on in South America, Middle America, Africa, the Middle East, I think, and so and of course other areas too. They were more in position, and what we'll find is that because of I think America had a strategic advantage. They had they prepared a wartime economy. It started the war in earnest 1939. They didn't get into it in 1941. They sort of had a physical immunity too, because at that time the theaters of war were already established, and it wasn't going to come, to the shores of Africa after Pearl Harbor. And of course, they were in position to help war-torn Europe, so they kind of stepped into the void before there was a vacuum, if you will. And then, of course, the rise of the Soviet Union as well. So they had to prepare for that. So they kind of prepared themselves, really. They kind of knew, even with the when the British mandate was up in 1948, it was almost a fait accompli for them to step in and be a benefactor, because obviously we can see that it's a strategic reason there. And of course, the military balance, they helped the military balance for the West as well, with NATO as well, and other treaties, military alignments as well during that time frame. So, but that's just a general, I'm just giving you a general. But Yeah, we definitely go into that as well because I think that it really gives us an understanding why our position in the world stage is where it is as our people, and why
Exactly.
really have no power base anywhere, and it's imperative for us to get one. Even if we have to have a revolutionary war to do that.
And
Of
see, the
course,
thing is that it, you know, we don't understand. I don't think we really understand how one part of the world has impacted the rest of the world, including the United States. Because although the United States is independent um, from the UK and from Europe, the we still use European principles. We have territories; those are our colonies. We've done the same. It's like we've done the same thing, that was done to us to other nations, to other countries, you know, and we just don't have our hands all over, on the continent of Africa because, well, hey, we have all these people over here that were snatched from there. Same thing with South American countries. That's the only reason is because they've already snatched a bunch of people from over there, you know, and made them part of their countries unwillingly, you know, and now the rest of Europe has kind of gone over there and tried to gobble up everything, and it just seems that now the nations in Africa are starting to wake up and come out of whatever fog that they're in, but there's so much corruption in the governments over there. There's so much corruption, and I think that's part of what hinders them, them being, totally independent because of the corruption.
yeah,
You've got people at the top that get paid to keep other people down. It's ridiculous. I mean, the only country over there that truly does not have any European influence in it is was it I always say, is it Liberia? The one that was populated by former, slaves that returned to Africa. But they
oh,
took
you talking about Liberia?
yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
but they
Yeah,
took
Liberia.
the European principles for their government back over there from the United States, and they still run.
Right.
And I know people from that particular country, and it's the government over there is just as corrupt as, I mean, it's really bad. It's really bad.
Right. Yeah, I mean, all of that though. I've always felt that that's ancillary to the world situation of imperialism, though. I think that's it's really the principle of uneven development, really. To really be honest. Whereas one half the world is technologically accelerated, modernized, and the other one is uh, impoverished, find themselves in a situation where they're chasing scarcity, micro scarcity, really, and their whole economy and markets are dominated by foreign entities. See, that's really the problem in Africa, and the the governments, the heads of state, are also who are working for neo-colonial, which are the former colonizers. They're part and parcel of keeping that exploitative relationship going. This is really a problem because I've always felt that people revolt against poverty. They revolt against uh, literacy, disease, these kind of things. That's really, when you get down to it, is what it is. But of course, we can give it names like neo-colonialism, imperialism, and a lot of people think that, or feel that, we're just throwing these names out there because we like it or we think it's cool, and none of that is the case. It's actually the analytical truth. That's what it is. It's the logic and the actual pattern calls for what it is, and there's no two ways about it. If you want this particular system, then you really, maybe unwittingly, you're for uneven principle of uneven development. That's the exploit. That's the ordinary relationship that this system here has with Africa.
Yeah,
and people don't understand it because
exactly, because I believe, like in a previous live, I talked about the fact, and I can't even remember which country it is, but one of the countries over there, they got their land back. I want to say it's Rwanda. They got their land back, and now countries, the people who they got, the big corporations who they got the land back so that they could farm it as, micro farmers and have their own farming land.
right.
Have governments like the US and Trump saying, well, we'll help you. Just sell us back the land, let us use your land, which defeats
Zimbabwe. I think I think we covered
Zimbabwe. Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, and it's things like that that are really stunting the growth of these nations to become independent. Yeah, the reason they need help right now is because you stole everything from them. Now they're fighting to get it back, and then you won't help them to be successful in that. That doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. So it would be more intelligent to have a central authority directing the economic policies for development, the type of development that is such a wide base that they can have sort of a stage of full economic and industrial development. You can't do it with the carve-ups that happened during the scramble for Africa, as you see on the map, because not only are they unviable because, well, a lot of reasons, but mainly because the monetary zones, and I made a video about that, are dominated by foreign countries, but at the same time, the economic sizes are smaller.
Because I don't even know.
The economic sizes are.
Do they have their own money in Zimbabwe?
Go right ahead. Pardon me?
Do they even have their own, do they even have their own currency in Zimbabwe? Are they still utilizing someone else's currency?
Yeah, but I mean, it's submerged in the foreign currencies that are in the monetary zones there. They have really very little, no value. Doesn't matter when you have you have American dollar in there. You have the Spanish mark in there. You have Deutsche marks in there, pesos in there, the pound, going back and forth.
They have money from other African nations coming into their country too.
Well, yeah. Well, in terms of the foreign interest, those who are investors, the finance capital, and the banks of issue are foreign banks that are dominant there. French banks, German banks, the British banks, American banks. See, everything is just like in colonial times. They're tied up to suit these particular countries, and they need puppets to facilitate that relationship. See, that's the problem. That you're not free. You're really not independent. You're basically working at the behest of Caucasians in foreign countries. And
what's going on with countries like Ghana? And I know we're getting up to around an hour, but what's going on with countries like Ghana?
In terms of the economy,
how
in
independent
terms of the
are they
politics.
really? Is how sovereign are they, or are they sovereign at all? Because they seem to be
No,
able to get so many of us to come there and make this thing.
well, no, they're right. Well, I mean, it doesn't seem to be a issue, but the fact of the matter is, since 1966, they were flung back into neo-colonialism when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in February of 1966. So yeah, I mean, you
That's
might
what I,
have
that's why I asked.
yeah.
That's what I
So
thought.
no, they're semi-independent. I mean, you may have people want to argue that, but you'll see the same pattern of economics there as I just kind of described. You'll see a foreign dominated banks of issue, foreign dominated. The finished products, a lot of finished products that they can manufacture themselves across Africa, are imported in. They also have intra-trade barriers with, like one country, landlocked countries, internationally. You gotta have a path. It's totally ridiculous.
Yeah,
All of this is built up to suit
logistics.
the foreign interest. The foreign interest is built to suit them. You have to understand, and it goes into the treasuries, the corporate businesses, the treasuries, and the pockets of the Western nations.
I
And
mean,
the boards of directors are
how
in.
many countries are propping up France's economy?
I think they in the French community, they basically control about, I think, 14, I believe, 13 or 14
out of 54 countries. That's sad.
Yeah, that was a carve up during the scramble for Africa in 1885. See, it's the same thing. It's just a modernized version of what happened in 1885 after the Berlin Conference. So, you go into all these adjustments going into 20th century, and now they've had a long time of entrenchment now.
And I truly believe that the only reason that our country didn't get involved in all of that colonization that Europe was doing at that time is because they had their own issues.
Right, but later they did, though. They did step in after, and I was covering that after World War II is when they kind of stepped into the breach and became sort of the lead imperialist of all the other imperialist countries. They did do that, and they're there now. They're there in terms of the not only the American dollar, but the corporations that are there. They took over some.
Because Africa is when they say Africa is westernized, what they really mean is that we have Americanized a lot of the cities. They try to be like us. They don't try to be like Europe. They try to be like our cities.
Right. But I think the principal thing here is that it's the resources that they get cheaply. It's really a source of cheap resources for them to manufacture and put on markets and make billions and billions of dollars. That's really what's going on here with the corporations. A lot of people don't look at the finances. They don't look at the international capital that goes in there. That's really what they want, and everything that we've talked about earlier on the ground has to facilitate that. You understand? So even culturally, if that's what it is, they have to Americanize things to actually to do that with governments that will serve their purpose, puppet governments. That's why if you look in Africa, for a long time, you saw all these coup d'etats going on because you had revolutionary governments getting in place, and they were. So again, they've had a long time to reanalyze this thing, reorient this thing. They instituted multi-parties and these kind of things. So the politics, to me, the politics there is confusing now for people because now you got all these multi-parties. I think that way, I think that's probably been the most effective thing that have taken the mentality from a independence, a real right. Well, a real de facto independence is taken away from that. So it's become more difficult, but not impossible. But it's become more difficult for the revolutionaries to get our point across.
That's saying in the chat, and you're absolutely right. I think when we do talk about Africa in depth, I think we do need to talk about the sex trafficking that's really going on over there culturally, because, you know, when those girls got kidnapped, it just fell off the news. I mean, they were still gone, and nobody was talking about it.
Right.
You know, and the sex trafficking over there is way worse than it is here, because a lot of it they use culture to allow them to do it.
Yeah, that's cultural imperialism, really, what that is. We talk about anything that any phenomenon you've seen here that wasn't really known to Africa, formerly known to Africa. That's I call that cultural imperialism as well. It still helps facilitate the siphoning of the resources.
Yeah, because that was
See, this props up.
brought in from other continents. That did not come
Right.
from Africans. The sex trafficking that's going on
Right.
around the world. I don't know where it started, but it didn't start there.
Right. So when you're chasing micro scarcity, you know, it's a breeding ground for criminals and organized crime and these things that people will do to make their fortunes or their money. So that it becomes a fertile ground, I should say, for that. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. So, you know, you're gonna see that and other things happen there. All kinds of things that have we consider maladjustments that formerly wasn't known there, but the breeding ground, it's a fertile, it's ripe for those things to happen. And but with a unified Africa under an all African Union government, I think these things could really be superfluous, because now, you know, you're talking about a plan developed economy. You're talking about a wide base of industrial development and making Africa the economic and political and military colossus that she's supposed to be. But unless you have sane people in power, of course, the countries would have to recede into states themselves within the wider African Union. There's have to be a joint military, common currency. So it would start really chopping the tentacles of these foreign corporations and these combines, these cartels that have formed to monopolize this wealth. You know, it would knock out the foreign currencies and really put Africa out of the reach of their exploiters.
Well, yeah, because you definitely have that criminal element within the African people themselves. Unfortunately, I mean, you have them using guerrilla tactics. I mean, because those girls were kidnapped in broad daylight, and the whole world knew about it, and nobody helped them.
No. Exactly. I mean, and it probably would have stopped you if you tried.
It made international news, and nothing was done.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, some of them did eventually come back, my understanding is, but I don't believe they all ever got back.
Yeah.
But Terry, I appreciate you coming up here on this. We will definitely need to get to together offline, because I definitely want to. I think the next thing that I do want us to talk about, we can. I think we might want to talk about the colonization of Africa. But I'm gonna do a little bit of study in regards to the Black Israelites and the Hebrew is, these groups that have formed over here, and how they're trying to give a message that's not quite the right message. They have part of the truth, they just don't have the whole truth, which is the reason why we did the history of Jews in the first place.
Right. Well, let me first say that I was working on low energy tonight. So if I faltered a little bit because of that, a little tired, but I wasn't going to miss this at all. I appreciate
Oh no, I
you giving me
appreciate
another
you coming
opportunity here.
on and giving us this knowledge. Because those who
My
are able
pleasure.
to come through, and I see the chat has started to fill up as we've been going through. But
Right.
you know, I do this, so that I can get that knowledge, and also I really want to start showcasing that are on your channel. Like, I know Uppity may be going in and out of the chat, but she has a lot of knowledge about that part of the world that I would love to get her up here and we, do a panel with the three of us up here.
I would love that. I would love, yeah, I would
You
love
know?
that.
So we just have
That would
to
be great.
we just have to get Uppity on board with doing that, because I really think that um that's something that I think that we could do as a collaboration. We can do it on, on my channel, and then do it on your channel, and do one on her channel, because I think it will help all three of our channels, and then it will also make more people exposed to the knowledge that both of you guys have in this particular area.
That would be. I think that's a great idea, sis. I would love to do that. Absolutely. I'm
Okay,
definitely
so
count me in.
you heard what I said. You heard what I said. You rants about us doing a collaboration. So with you getting up on a panel, and we can talk about some of this stuff, because you've got a lot of knowledge about this part of the world, especially because you lived in this part of the world at one point. So I would like to get your perspective about things over there as well. So we definitely want to plan to have that as a panel sometime in the near future, Miss You Rants.
Yeah, in fact, I've subscribed to that too. So yeah. So
Yeah, but I just think that will be something, because for those of you who don't know, Uppity Unicorn has a wealth of knowledge about the culture, um, especially the Muslim culture
can
in
you,
that part of the world.
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me? Oh,
yeah,
you can. Okay. 1 second. Okay.
yeah. She has a wealth of knowledge, and I would love to get her on one of our not so random chats, and the three of us get up there and chop it up. So we definitely can do that in the future. But I appreciate you coming up here, Terry. I know you're tired and everything, so I'm not gonna hold you any longer. I'm about to shut this down.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming up. And if you got, and drop your link, and somebody drop Terry's link, or Terry, drop your link in the chat. If someone can drop it for me, so that people can subscribe to his channel, because he's going to be doing some live streams on his own channel, and he has some videos already up there that you guys, I promise, will get some true knowledge from. Let me just come on camera so you guys can see. Hey everyone, I got my hair like a little girl today. It's hot here in California. Thank you for coming up, Terry. Thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight, and just getting this knowledge. And for those who are listening on the playback, thank you for listening to this playback of this. As I said at the beginning, what I'm planning to do once we finish this, because we do still have a little bit more. We got up to 2010, but we're in 2020, so I think we will probably at least go up to as close to present day as we can, and just wrap a bow around this. So Terry, you let me know when you're ready to do that, and we'll add that in there, and then we'll finish this up on this, and then we can move on to our next topic, or we can finish it up and start on our next topic at the same time, however you want to do it. But I thank you guys for being here tonight. I hope everybody is going to have a really safe weekend. I know that a lot of parts of the country are opening up. Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, because I know you're not supposed to do self-promotion. So thank you for putting it in there for me so that Terry doesn't have to do that. But as I said, I know a lot of the country is opening up, but I still hope people are going to be careful and still practice social distancing, because as the country is opening up, more people are catching this. And I know that there are mutations over in China. There may not be any mutations here yet, but I just think it's just smart to continue to do social distancing, wear your mask. Here's one of my masks, you know, and no handshaking. Do the fist bump, you know, no hugs for a while, you know, unless it's your significant other. But let's just continue to be safe. But before I go, I'm going to give y'all what I always do. Folks are leaving the room because they know I'm over. I offer you guys peace and blessings from the West Side. Now, I may come on sometime during the day. I'm not really sure because I know I'm going to be out for a little bit. But I will see you guys tomorrow night if I don't see y'all during the day. So thank y'all for coming. And thank you again, Terry, for coming on up. And please go and subscribe to his channel. I will see you guys soon. Bye.